The Constitution has yet to be amended to allow for land expropriation without compensation, but it's already had an effect on investment in South Africa. At least that's according to a report on the macroeconomic impact assessment of expropriation. The report says capital formation has already declined by 7% in the past 11 quarters, and it warns that expropriation will have disastrous economic consequences for the country, just like it did in Zimbabwe and Venezuela. Well, the report's lead researcher, Dr. Roelof Botha, joins us now to discuss this. Good evening, Dr. Botha. Thank you very much for your time. Before we get to what the report actually says, just take us through very briefly your methodology, what you did to in the process of compiling this report.
Yes, certainly. In this report, the main focus was on capital formation. The importance of capital formation cannot be overemphasized, because if you jeopardize capital formation, you're not only jeopardizing current growth, but also future growth. And we're talking about economic capital here. Obviously, a tractor for a farmer, a small bakkie for a builder, roads, obviously infrastructure as well, and the equipment that we need in our factories, in the takeaway shops to make the food for us. And if there's so much uncertainty surrounding property ownership, not only of land, but of whatever property you have, then you are going to be hesitant to invest further. And so what we did, the team that I put together, including Prof. Ilse Botha from UJ, who did the econometric analysis, is to start out by looking at which countries have actually implemented such policies, as I call it, expropriation without comprehension. And then to see what happened to their capital formation GDP ratios. And that data is readily available, except for North Korea and countries like that, failed states. And in every single case, unequivocal empirical evidence, capital formation takes one hell of a dip. And we use that as a justification for a very conservative, well, two scenarios, 5% decline, 10% decline over 8 quarters. And the results are frightening. We will enter this year a serious recession, not a technical one, a year-on-year recession. We will have a dramatic decline in fiscal revenues, and I can almost guarantee you that we will be downgraded very shortly by Moody's if we implement this.
But then, what is the issue? Is the issue how this thing should be handled, or whether in fact it should even be attempted? Because that's what I was grappling with as I was reading.
Yes. We try to make it clear in the report that ours is not one that is debating the merits of land reform. You have to be pretty naive if you're a South African and you don't appreciate the need for land reform. Absolutely. But it should be done in a pragmatic and a smart way. So if you do it wrongly, if you create the impression that a government agency, a bureaucrat politician is going to take your land, then you could have the unbelievably disastrous effects of what happened in Zimbabwe and Venezuela. I firmly believe that our parliament is smart enough not to do this, but to approach it in such a way.
I mean, you talk about, for example, looking at an approach that will maximize new economic opportunities. You talk about a CODESA type of an arrangement. But correct me if I'm wrong. It does read like your report falls into that trap of being seen to be, or looking like it's going to demonize expropriation without compensation, without putting as much effort into looking at the solutions and how practical those may be. For instance, you also you talk about what happened in Zimbabwe, but you're not looking at what happened elsewhere where such a land reform processes were more successful. To get what I'm trying to say, in other words, striking that balance so that you're not seen to be raising some khafar.
Yes, no, certainly. But that's the next step. Watch out for my next report, which will be based on case studies of successful land reform projects in South Africa, and there have been numerous, where you can put a business plan together in a sort of a partnership approach between whoever owns the land and whoever is going to be the likely beneficiaries, and you see who can add what value to that model, but as long as you do it without scaring off investors. So, and I must tell you, in our research, in every country that has reversed policies of a diminution of private property ownership, where they put that back into society, there has been a dramatic increase in capital formation. And that's our whole point, is just to say what will happen based on empirical evidence if we do it. I'm sure that we're going to do it in a much smarter way. For instance, by starting out by giving title deeds to the 3 million plus beneficiaries of the RDP housing project.
But would it not have been prudent, though, Dr. Botha, to have, come out with that second part of your report, which you're saying is still coming, before even releasing this, so that people can then see the pros and cons, and then that, in my view, would have, contributed more meaningfully to the debate, because the way it reads now, it sounds like a document from an advocacy group that says, don't even try to do this.
Well, you've got a point there, but time is precious, and I've spent many long evenings this far. George Stigler, a previous winner of the Nobel Prize for Economics, once said that you cannot frighten modern man with incantations, but you can scare them with evidence. And realizing that time is running out in terms of submissions to the Constitutional Review Committee, my team and I decided, okay, well, let's look at as much data as we can find, run it through an econometric model, and see what the results are. And it's not trying to demonize land reform, only land reform which is not done in a correct fashion. That is terribly, terribly dangerous.
Take us through what you believe. Maybe it's an opportunity to perhaps get into what you've already, or some at least, of what you've already, found as in the other part of your research. When you say it's clear from international evidence that land reform should be based on market principles and pragmatism, what, in your view, would constitute a more pragmatic approach to what we've seen and heard already, especially during the course of the hearings that Parliament was conducting?
Well, once again, it's a good question, but you're sort of preempting my second phase. But can I just tell you in generic or very general terms, there is such a strong inverse correlation between a lack of economic freedom and economic growth. It is so clear that in countries where you have private property ownership, which is absolutely guaranteed, you unleash innovation, you unleash the entrepreneurship, the venture capitalism that you need to start businesses, especially with the fourth industrial revolution around the corner. We cannot afford to fall behind the curve. In countries where you start diminishing individual economic freedom, there's only one way, and that's down. You can see that in the North and South Korea divide. I mean, there is no clearer example. And we have been slipping down the ranks of economic freedom in South Africa. We need to reverse this. If you take land without compensation belonging to a private individual, we will slip much further down those ranks, and I can guarantee you that Moody's are going to hit us. And if they hit us, we go to an Argentina situation. They are junked with Moody's. We have investment grade status, and we need to protect that at all costs. And that's one reason why I wanted these results to be on the table for debate as quickly as possible, because it is crucially important to this country's future over the next decade to retain our investment grade status. And to do that, we must make it attractive for investors. Land reform without compensation is like stealing. That is not making it attractive for investors.
Dr. Botha, looking forward to your next report, which I'm sure will add a great deal of value to the very pertinent issues that this first part of your report is actually raising. He's a lead researcher on this report, Dr. Roelof Botha.